When Dan first came to me and talked to me about Scooby Apocalypse, he told me that it was going to be the Scooby characters, the monsters were real, it's the end of the world, and that's what caught me right there, the end of the world. That means I can blow up Chicago, and I don't see you screaming at me, I've got to use it next issue. It's a separate environment, separate reality, and it's just been fun to work with. And I preferred that because a lot of times I do get that, we need Chicago next issue. Now I've got a story that I can just explore at my leisure without having to worry about what's happening in anyone else's book. So it's just, it's almost like wish fulfillment.
Okay. Okay, going to Blue Beetle. Back to Blue Beetle a second.
Oh, God.
Rebirth. You talked about Rebirth of Blue Beetle. Is there any elements that you reintroduced to Blue Beetle that would be considered part of the Rebirth that we might have gotten away from and we're returning back to?
Yeah, his friends, his family, the fact that he's a high school kid. He's got, I mean, in the original Blue Beetle, we had his friends Paco and Brenda. We had his arch foe, his friend, his aunt, Paro. And we just brought all of that back and added Ted to the mix because, let's face it, Blue Beetle got away from what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be about a young guy learning how to be a superhero under extraordinary but really uncomfortable circumstances. And when I got the opportunity to do it again, I figured let's bring him back to those circumstances. So, with a certain amount of arrogance, I scalped out a lot of his history and said, okay, we'll take it from this point on. Because I'm more interested in Paco and Brenda as friends. I'm more interested in Blue Beetle as the new superhero. Ted was added to the mix, but he fits in well as kind of the awkward mentor. So it was just really going back to what made Blue Beetle work and what made Ted Cord Blue Beetle work, and then combining them.
Now, I'm going to go over to Tom for a second. Tom, Batman, so many stories are told. Is there anything that you feel you've approached in Rebirth, bringing something back to the character that might have been written out or just avoided at any period of time, and something that you focused on as the heart of your story?
No, yeah, it's all original. I went right at the Alfred relationship. This is the thing I'm most enjoying, is writing the Alfred Bruce and their dynamic, and making somehow their chemistry. They have this sort of weird lethal weapon chemistry. I write these very serious books that where people just stare at windows and contemplate their life and existence, and you can write that into Batman. He loves staring at windows and contemplating. But like after the Lego movie, it like totally ruined it because everyone just hears that song in their head. So every time,
What was the question?
All I know is everything's awesome. That's all I know.
Dead parents. So every time I get to that moment, I'm like, okay, Batman's gonna go stare at a wall and think about his dead parents for a little while. I bring in Alfred to undercut it, and it creates this chemistry. And so and I realize that that's what Alfred's for. He's the one guy who doesn't take Bruce as seriously as Bruce takes himself. And I love that dynamic of bringing Alfred's role into it. It came back to the question.
Thank you. Let's go over to James for a second. James,
all right.
You have a team book dynamic there. You got a lot of Robins in that book.
Yeah. Well.
Is there any one you like writing more than others, and any that you like writing less? How do you see them all fitting within the course of the series?
Really? Who's his favorite Robin?
Yeah. I thought I said it a lot better.
I mean, the answer to all of that is the same thing. My favorite character in DC Comics is Tim Drake, and has always been Tim Drake. That is the character that brought me into DC from the very beginning. I've read every issue of the 90s Robin series, read every issue of Young Justice, read every issue of the Tim Drake led Teen Titans, like that. That's where that was my entry point. And Tim as a character is very important to me. The fact that he can look at Batman's history with he has a bit with optimism in a way that Dick has a kind of unbridled optimism in the way he looks at the world, but I think that with Tim it's a lot more like it's an intellectual optimism. It's about building something that can last. And you saw that in Teen Titans and building a system that can actually really building systems that can last. And one of my favorite aspects of the character going back a while is just the idea that like when Bruce was Tim's age, he was not as smart as Tim is like right now, and the fact that he is the detective. He's not the strongest fighter and all of that. So it's just like those are the aspects that I really love, and being able to bring him into the team is kind of the emotional heart, because most of the book is kind of driven by the two ideologies of Batwoman and Batman. Who, Batwoman is much more about groupthink and, being a unified force in a different way, and Bruce is very much about like singular action. And I think that Tim sees what works in both and sees how you can draw both together into something new. So that was something I really wanted to play with in the book, and I'm really happy I get to work with it.
You got the word intellectual?
Yeah, no, it's and actually one of the reasons why I love doing this, honestly, it's fun for me to hear the thought process behind the characters and stories. Because everybody sits there, they said, oh, where'd they come up with this? Where'd this come? And the level of depth and understanding, I think, is what really helps give a lot of depth to the characters, and you can see it in the work, so that's great to hear. I want to move over for a second back to Dan Jurgens for a second. Tim Drake has been someone you've been writing as an older character in Batman Beyond, and yet things seem to be changing.
Yes, things are changing. We have Batman Beyond Rebirth coming out like 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
And at that point, Terry McGinnis gets back into the costume and becomes Batman. And then you have to follow further to see what happens to Tim. Not that I'm indicating it. You understand?
Back over to Hope. Back that way. We keep moving the camera around. Batgirl. It's an interesting thing, because now we're talking about the Rebirth themes. Right before your tenure on there, they've done some really interesting things with shaking up the character, almost young the character down and brought a different sensibility to that. Now you're on the book, and you had something that was interesting and people reacted to, you're taking it over. How do you approach taking on something that was changed and incorporating ideas of Rebirth that will feel like it's moving back to someplace a little different than that? So how do you reconcile the two aspects of Batgirl?
How did you get that question out?
I'm just happy she understood what I was saying.
I'm not sure I did, but
Take it away.
yeah, cool.
Would you say something though?
Yeah.
Question specifically.
Sure.
Dan won't mind.
The story that I'm really writing is about self-discovery. So Batgirl has been basically in this. She's been hanging out with her friends. She's been working with a bunch of other people in Burnside, and what I'm doing is taking her out of that and forcing her to be on her own, be more of she doesn't have a support system really. So I'm taking all of that away and forcing her to figure out what she's got that she hasn't been using.
Especially, let's go back over a second. There's a lot of conversation always beforehand about the relationship between Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson.
Uh-huh.
How much of that plays into your storytelling?
None.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to switch off of Rebirth for a second, and since I have Paul and Keith together, no. Has anybody ever read Paul and Keith's Legion of Superheroes? One of the most seminal bodies of work for Legion of Superheroes. So I just figured we're sitting here together. I just want to shift the camera back for a second or two. What was it like working together? Paul, how was it like working with Keith?
Why are you starting this now?
Nothing better to do.
I figured, what the hell? It's because you want to know this, right? Yeah. I'm asking questions if I'm sitting here with you guys. There you go.
The best days you have writing comics, because it's a collaborative medium, is when you write something.
I'm not going to say anything nice, so don't
And the artist transforms it into something else. I would do plots, we'd bullshit a little bit in the hall sometimes when Keith was coming up about what we were going to do next, but fairly briefly. I'd write out a plot, give it to Keith, he'd draw something. I'll let him describe his process himself. It would come back. There would be scenes in it that were completely unrecognizable to me. He'd have a little liner note here or there that might give me a clue about what he had in mind. The essence of what he was doing with the characters was completely sympathetic to the same things that I was trying to do. We saw them in our best days very much in the same way. I'd let him kill somebody that he really wanted to kill. Karate Kid, again and again and again. He'd let me fuck up the life of somebody that I wanted to screw around with. But he'd come up with a totally different scene. I would write something over it that had nothing to do with his liner notes, nothing to do with what he had in mind, nothing to do with what I had started with. But it was better than either, I think, what I started with or what he intended to do. That's when the collaborations are really working, when you have that kind of 1 and 1 equals 3. You have some grounded common sense about where you want to go. We came up with a routine for inventing planets. Instead, Keith didn't need a lot of direction. I think it's very fair to say that there may not be an artist since Jack Kirby who is as much of an idea factory as Keith is, as an artist collaborator. 30% of those ideas should never see print. 30% of them are pretty brilliant. And the rest, they're sort of what you do all day, right? But Keith didn't need me to give him a lengthy description of a new planet. We adopted a shorthand that I would just designate an artist who had created the planet. This is going to be a Jack Kirby world. This is going to be a Monet world. And I don't know what the fuck I meant when I was doing that. But I had something in my head. You have to draw. That's the real work. I just tell stories. Sorry. Sorry. Don't try this again. But the ability to create that way, to trust an artist as a partner, to build worlds, to design things, to take things out to a logical extrapolation, is a wonderful gift for a writer. And we didn't always agree on what happened, and there are a couple of periods during the course of our many times collaboration over the years where those were serious disagreements about what were going to happen to the characters or what the direction of the material should be. But I always knew I would get clear storytelling back from Keith, and that he was always putting himself into the work as much as he could. Now, actually, you remember that time? You remember that time at the doctor's office when you say you died? You did. This has just been your ghost, and we're really nice to your ghost. And there was the other times when I wanted to kill you, but luckily I'm not a violent man. But that was my vision of what went on in the journey.
Thank you. Keith, you have 60 seconds for rebuttal.
I don't know what to say because I would get Paul's plots, I would read them on the way home in the bus, I would rip them up and throw them in the sewer grate at the corner. I would walk up to the apartment, I would write down what I remembered of the plots. 9 times out of 10, that was the story he wanted to tell. That's basically what I did for close to 3 years.
Thank you for that. Yannick, I'm going to go to you one more time. Follow that one. Follow that one. Yeah, you've worked with Grant, and I've read Grant scripts. No, I'm serious, I've read Grant scripts, and I know how complex they can be, and so full of story.
Yeah, I think he works differently with depending on who's going to draw the thing. I remember the first time I worked with him, I was coming up from 2 years of doing stuff with Alan Moore and Peter Organ. We're doing Terra Obscura, and Alan Moore and Peter would give me like a beautiful 120 pages of script for 22 pages comic. I would read that like a book, and knew exactly what I was going for. Every panel, the intention of it, and all of it. And my first script from Grant was on Seven Soldier, and I've been sent like 10 pages of different font, different color, no dialogue. And I remember Pete Tomasi was the editor on that thing, and I've called Pete and said, can you send the file again? I think it's corrupt. I know he told me this is what I got, this is what you get from Grant. And I tried my best to make sense of it. And because it's a beautiful skeleton, but there's no muscle. He doesn't care really for the minute interaction in a scene between the space and stuff. So all of this is up to me. And I did what I could. And somehow, I think this is how he works. He gets my pages, or anybody else's pages. It's unexpected as a result, because the script was so open in some way. And that is a form of stimulation for him to move further. I've been telling this story of in Wonder Woman Earth One to give you guys an example of how specific, yet he says nothing on some of the scripts. In Wonder Woman Earth One, for those that have looked at it, there's an interior scene where the women are dancing. It's a big party. It's like a summer solstice, drinking, whatever. And the description I got from it is, Grant says, as we look at these wild women, we feel like anthropologists looking, gazing at a lost culture that we can barely comprehend. And he goes, imagine people that have experienced every permutation of sexuality for 3,000 years until only a ritual remains. This is the description. I know what he wants, but I have no idea what to draw. And so I came up with something. And because he waits for the stuff to come in, before writing the next part, well, it's unexpected. And you look at it, and you throw some curveball here and there, like this, or I've drawn a battle with an invisible robot, even in the plot itself. It's Batman is fighting an invisible robot, and he fights it because he throws gas bomb, and where the gas doesn't reach, there's a mass there, and so Batman can fight this. It's uncool like that, but it's almost impossible to draw. And I know he's doing that on purpose. See how he is.
So what you're finding out is just how many artists there are who are carrying their writers. More than you'd ever get.
I just have one last question on that. Which style do you prefer, the 122-page, 20-page script, or the anthropologist?
Honestly, my time with Scott when we were working on Swamp Thing, and that was before his plate got so full of Batman and it became hard to reach. A lot of it, I remember the first few issues, we would just Skype and talk about things. How do you feel about a monster made of bones? So, let me do some sketches. And I remember an entire issue that is just a discussion over Skype, which is basically it's a moment where Swamp Thing goes through like a bunch of monsters to get to Abby on the other end. It's like a Lord of the Ring final big battle of a bunch of monsters. So writing it per se, it's not so fun, but discussing it, it's kind of cool. And I can come up with 10 monsters which are it's the design that I do. But yeah, discussion is very intimate link, which is the thing you can't get with Grant at all. Grant is almost impossible to reach, but he reached through the script, so, and probably my
I just think it's great.
You're supposed to read the plot.
You know what? We got a few minutes left. I'd love to take some questions from the audience. Do we have any questions? I guess we can ask that Joker over there. I've been wanting to do that joke.
I have a question for Tom King.
Sir?
You're using Psychopirate in your
There you go.
Sorry.
Thank
You're using Psychopirate in your Batman run. Is there going to be any connection with the multiverse? Because he's most known for like Crisis on Infinite Earths and Animal Man and all that.
Yes. I should expand. I thought Psychopirate, when I was a kid, I read Crisis from the back bins, and he was an amazing character because it was the Anti-Monitor was the most powerful being in the universe, and he was using the Psychopirate to conquer the universe. This like, little weenie ability didn't make any sense at all to me as a kid. I was like, that's amazing. That's a really stupid thing to do. You should use Lex Luthor or something. But then you realize that he's like the Purple Man from Jessica Jones, right? Like he's invulnerable in the way, or the Mule from Asimov. If you read those books, he can conquer any superhero just by giving them a look, and that frightened the crap out of me as a 6-year-old or whatever. And so even frightens the crap out of your 6-year-old you then put in comics when you're in your 30s, just like the rule. But then what Grant's artist did with him during the Animal Man run, to make him this character the only one who could remember all these universes, and as we merge these universes, I mean, you got to play with that, right? You can't stop. So yeah, it's gonna play well.
Thank you.
Question. Right ahead.
Hi. Thank you. I've enjoyed all your work for many, many years. I want to thank you for that. However, as a fan, it seems that from an editorial perspective, many times these large mega events start out spectacularly, and then there seems to be some editorial shifts in the middle. So my question to you, in general for Rebirth, has this all been sort of plotted out over an extended period of time, so you have a beginning, middle, and end?
And I'll take the question. Yes. we have it laid out, bare bones, laid out for at least a 2-year plan. Because ultimately, when you start off with the Rebirth special, the way it is, with a number of questions and mysteries that are set up there, you have to be able to know when you're paying them off. But truth be spoken, we did want to take our time getting to that because the main goal was to reestablish all the books first. To reestablish the characters, get you familiar with them, get you excited by them again, reestablish their base of who they are and what they're fighting for and what they're about. And then once we do that, then we'll start to roll in the stories, and you see much greater integration of the storylines and see these bigger stories moving forward. We announced yesterday that we're doing a Justice League Suicide Squad, Justice League versus Suicide Squad event crossover that takes place in December and January. You see a lot of the stories starting up then. Okay, there you go. Let's go back there.
So, along with Rebirth, when is the Legion coming back?
It's hard act to follow. It's one of those characters that, we gave a tease with Saturn Girl in the Rebirth special, and it is something that you'll be seeing. There's a chance that one of these people on this dais will be writing one of those characters. How about that? Superman!
Yes.
I was just wondering if maybe there was, that book had some really great characters. Any chance of them showing up in Manchester or us getting a spectrum before the book?
Let's turn that question over to the Batman writers.
Just in terms of the like horror in Gotham, my second, I think you can see horror influences in like both my work and Tom's work. But I think that there's at least in my second arc definitely leans more towards the scary since it's starting in October. But I'm staying away from the supernatural edge for the moment. But that doesn't mean I'm not invested in what the supernatural edge in Gotham actually is and how it affects everything. And when those stories happen, I would definitely look to play with some of the characters that are in Gotham, established in Gotham to, deal with those threats.
Tom, anything else?
I agree, it's an amazing series. Ray wrote the crap out of it. I don't know how to write a Spectre story yet. I feel like like the hand of God, and act of vengeance, and just that image again from Crisis where he's the one who reaches out his hand and grabs that hand. Like he's such a big character. Like you need a story that's worthy of him, like a Dr. Manhattan type of story. I don't have it yet. So I hope to have it someday. But I mean, there's so much. I mean, he's a Schuster character, so there's such a legacy. So yeah, I just don't have it yet. Hopefully I will.
Thank you. Over there? Yep. Yep.
Hey, Dan, good to see you again. Having back here for the New York Town Hall Rebirth. I'm thinking a lot about the death of New 52 Superman and John Kent and how they will impact the rest of the DC, possibly Superman plus Justice League as well. Because I feel like that's a very underrated subject, and as time goes on, it will be a bigger deal. Are you guys planning on doing both of those two elements?
Yeah, definitely. Certainly, we're not done telling all the stories about New 52 Superman. There are going to be some reverberations that come from that, and obviously there are the number of John stories that are on the docket and waiting to be told.
Okay.
It goes pretty deep, and so all of that will unfold over the next couple of years.
Yeah, because I like how you're starting to incorporate it when you guys talk about bringing New 52 Superman back. I'm like, nah, keep him dead because I feel like the books are more emotional than that.
Yep. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Front row. Sure. Yep.
I know it was a big reveal and I know fans been speculating, but the whole idea, I don't want y'all to spoil it, but the idea comes about the three Jokers. I'm curious, is it three physical Jokers or is it just the one Joker who evolved metaphorically, like about jokes and all that, then crime, then became more psychotic. His mind kind of evolved, probably not even aware of it, that he's kind of like the same person with three, all in one, so they change his style.
I think what you're identifying is going to be a bit of a mystery story that's going to play out next year. But from the appearance of the way the story lays out, there appears to be three physically different Jokers. Okay. Well, I didn't say that either, did I? I said it appears. Right over there, back of the row. Yep.
In Nightwing right now, it's dealing with the relationship between the Parliament of Owls and the Court of Owls, so Tim Seeley's rocking out on that whole concept over in Nightwing. We know what's going on in all the other books, and they all kind of touch each other, so just you wait and see.
Right in the front.
Okay, so in regards to the whole diversifying the line, DCU, I miss DCU. DCU had a lot of diversity, which is a word that I really hate, representation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we have a few books, you guys have a few books. Are there going to be any other books coming out, or should I say any other creators of color that will be knocking out some books? Because I don't know, I like to see representation.
Creative of color, absolutely. As a matter of fact, at this moment we have 5 or 6 creators of color working for us at this time on projects that we haven't announced yet. Okay, first things first. Second thing is that what we're trying to do is that just the realistic aspect of the business is if we put books out there, we hope that people find them, and if they don't, unfortunately, economy makes us cancel a series. So our goal right now is to use these double ships and to use the books that we're doing as springboards to reintroduce characters and get people excited about them, and then from there hopefully be able to spin out into their own series from that. I think that gives us a better chance, because what happens sometimes we throw out so much product, nobody even knows it's there. And they miss out on a lot of good books because of that. But if we have books that are working, books that are selling well, and if we put characters of color or diversify our character base, we should be doing that normally in our comics.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Realistically speaking, the characters that exist in our books should reflect the audience that's reading the books. The people that are here should be represented in the comics so that they feel very relatable and also feel contemporary, because this is the world today. You know, we have characters and stories that were created 75, 80 years ago. They've got to transform, they've got to grow. And everything we're doing right now is to grow our audience. So even though we're saying we're getting back to the core of who the characters are, that does not change the world that they live in. The world that they live in should be as diverse as possible. And more importantly, the characters that come out of there organically should be as diverse as possible to really show the full breadth of the DC line. Okay? Right over there, sir. Yep.
Okay, my question is more about the Flash family.
Sure.
So, how much are we going to see, like, 352 Wally West and the new, like, the African American Wally West?
There's actually a storyline that's going to be coming up in the Flash books where the two of them team up, and it's the older Wally training the younger Wally. So they're going to be actually working together. So you're going to see all of them working together, both in the Titans book as well as the the Flash Titans. Great. I think we have time for one, two more questions. Let's go at least two. Let's go right there first.
I know this isn't a Rebirth question, but is Injustice ending?
No, we got another Injustice series coming down the